to Behind the Story, where we discover the story behind your favorite stories. My name's Lisa from the Collab Press, and I'm also a contemporary rom-com author.
And I'm Naomi. I write biblical fiction and also facilitate biblical fiction aficionados over on Facebook. I'm looking forward to seeing this interview. It is with a contemporary author, Kendra Broekheis. Forgive me on that one. Looking forward to hearing that. But before we get into that, what's going on in your life this month?
Well, this month we're wrapping up some Taryn Daniels' work. I co-author with Tabitha, and we're doing romantic comedies set on Nantucket Island. It's the second series we're doing, and so it's the third book. So we're just preparing all the launch for that. That's been great, and I will be working on a Lisa Renee title, extending one of my rom-com series on that. So. Taking things slower this year and try not to take on other things like extra collaboration. So we'll see how we go with that, and not setting up pre-orders and all that kind of stuff, just plodding through one thing at a time, and just making more balance in my whole life. Like, I'm doing this year I've been doing lots of sports and stuff like that, taken up running, worked my way up. So see how I go when this airs, but basically I've worked my way up to running 5 kilometers. I don't know what that is in miles, but
Wow.
And join some running groups. And we have a thing, I think it's all around the world. It's called Park Run. It's on Saturday mornings, and there's different locations in your local areas. And I have a group that we meet up, we go to different ones, and go for coffee after and that. So yeah, that's a bit of fitness, being summer in Australia, and coming into the still warmer season, just getting out and about, snorkeling and swimming and things like that. So just a bit more balance, and not being, because I think we all sort of did that, COVID and everything. And then when you're starting your author career, you can just be completely just immersed in your little author bubble and inside. And I would go for walks by myself, I have to stretch my neck and everything, and get some movement happening. But yeah, just having more balance and eating healthier. There was one when a couple of years ago, I wasn't even really having much breaks and having proper lunch. I could just be eating a handful of nuts and a banana or whatever. But my iron levels went really low. And there was another author, Australian author, that was posted about that she needed a iron infusion. And then I was feeling really tired, and I thought I should get my bloods tested. And then I found out I was anemic as well, like really low. It was something stupid, like 6 or something.
Oh, no.
And yeah, so I got an iron infusion that time. But now sometimes I get into these bad habits and I realize, no, I've got to eat healthier. So, like I'm cooking a lunch, like I'll have grilled salmon and salad, or a steak and salad, or something. Have a proper lunch, because I'm at home, work from home. So
yeah,
just doing that kind of stuff. And yeah, I think that helps it when you are focusing, like whether it's marketing or writing, you're really enjoying that, and you've just got a bit more energy and focus. So that's my
you can show up better if you're taking better care of yourself. You can show up for yourself and for the readers and all the things you've got to do better.
Yeah, it's the long game, and I think a lot of authors are finding that. There was a couple of years ago, and people had the time, they were stuck inside or whatever, but there were a lot of authors who were doing this rapid releasing, or writing a book a month or every 2 months, and a lot of them eventually burnt out. Some people can still maintain that's their full-time job, their focus, but some were still balancing family and doing all that. And now we're realizing it's really just the long game of just adding another book to your inventory, basically, to your assets. And it's a journey, so now I do have, a few series under my belt. It's not this rush that I've got to release all these books every year. If I release 2 or 3, yeah, no, it's different. It's not a 100-word manuscript like yours.
I'm like, I'm still on half of one.
50,000, like a 50,000 manuscript out there, and Daniel's are 50,000. If I do a novella, it's 25,000. So it's you're doing 2 novellas for your one.
And of course historical and needing to get the the
Lots
research
of
and all that.
research. Yeah, yeah.
So.
So how's it going with you at this stage? What are
Well,
you
I
into
think
the
I definitely resonate with the balance. I'm very active with church, and it's coming up on the summer programs with our Bible school, and then do community outreaches and stuff like that. So um it's just, you just have to find the balance that works for you. I think you were alluding to that, but like if you can release a book a month and you have the time for that, that's amazing. But if you can release a book a year, then that's also amazing. You have to do what you can do, because otherwise something's gonna suffer, your health, your family, it's just gonna be stressful. So I agree with that on that. So yeah, still plugging away on, and they were persuaded with Donna Elaine, and really loving how it's shaping up. And I'm working with a biblical fiction author and good friend to me and the show, Dana McNeely, and doing more of like a one chapter at a time critique, so I can glean from her wisdom. And then we're in the same genre, so it kind of makes it um like we can see if have you gotten enough research, or we it's different with someone who's in that same genre as you, as you know. But
Yeah, that's great. So you swapping chapters on the book you're working with Donna,
mhm.
with Dana as a
Yeah.
critique. Are you planning to do something with Dana, writing with her in the future, do you think? I know you're running the
We've
Facebook.
not talked about it. We She has this idea for one, when she's done with her next this series, that she told me that she wanted me to do her audiobooks for. So that's the only
Okay, yeah.
collaboration besides what we're doing on biblical fiction aficionados. But other than that, I mean, even that, it was like, I don't know, that's so far away. Don't talk to me right now. Like, talk to me when that book is done, and then we will see. So
Yeah, so you're focusing on this. And you had a break for a while. You're doing some audio stuff. Did you get on Desolate Heights and done on audio?
I started that twice, and then I actually just found I found someone who's an audio editor. So I think I can figure that back out into my schedule again, because I think that was part of it. It's like I can say it, but then I know at the end I'm gonna have to deal with editing, or I'm gonna have to, once that's done, then I'm gonna have to format. So that's a huge weight off my shoulder. Now I just got to get it back scheduled in. And of course, she's got her certain format of what you're doing in between pauses, or if you're doing a redo. So I think I'll just go back and start on Desolate Heights again. And she'll take 3 chapters at a time. So I've got a plan. So I just got to get going. Hopefully by when this is airing on April 1, hopefully we'll have progress on that one. But yeah, so
Yeah.
I've got that, and then just trying to stay on top of the marketing and also the writing, and adding in those audiobooks too. So
Yeah. It's an interesting one with the audio, because I did do my rom-com series with a narrator, which was expensive. And
right.
it's a trickle back of it's a lot of library borrows. It's with Find Away Voices, which is being bought by Spotify.
Oh, is it?
And
Okay.
yeah, and then Apple books are doing amazing AI narration. They just convert. You only choose one voice, so male or female, but it's really probably the best that I've heard with the AI, because you can like do it all yourself with AI voices and change the pitch and add some more emotion sort of thing, which sounds funny,
Really?
but yeah. So you can work things and you can really spend time on it. But this is really simple. It's through draft to digital. You have to have your book wide. So you could actually put your book wide first and then submit it once it's converted to narration. And on Apple Books, you could actually take it off wide, the ebook. So that's one way around it if you want to still be in KU. But we've got the Taryn Daniels first series, Cousins of Nantucket, in Apple Books. I don't know if it's really earning anything really yet, but it's, you know, it's another thing, and it's in the audiobooks. I wouldn't be able to put at this stage invest money into doing 6 titles
Right.
with audiobooks, especially the price that I was paying. And I can't record them myself really because it's like I have an Australian accent and it's American characters set in America. So, or else I probably would do that, narrate myself, and then hand it to an editor. I could possibly do some with my Australian series. But then again, you know, I've got American characters. So yeah, it's an interesting one. It'll be good if there's any authors out there that are watching. Let us know what you're doing with your
Yeah.
books and things like that. There was a big push back a while. There's authors that had all these backlist of narrated audiobooks and they put them on YouTube, and they're getting monetized for the hours that are listened, and they're actually making money more than they were
Really?
with Amazon Audible, because the royalty isn't great. They charge a lot of money for their credit for their audiobooks, but the author doesn't get a lot. It's 40% if you're exclusive to Audible, but it's like a lot lower, something stupid like 12% for me for Audible. So it's better for me to sell it through something else like Chirp, his BookBub audiobooks.
Yeah.
Finding Voices has different things. And there's a thing at the moment with Spotify, or apparently they've declared how much they've paid out for audiobook royalties, but not many authors, they're like, where is these royalties? And what is this data and stuff? So they need to come to the party a bit more with explaining these things. So yeah, so we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I'm not really doing huge amounts with the audio yet, just sort of seeing. And you've got to also like, it's got to be a winning series. If it's a winning series as an ebook, or even you're getting paperback sales, then you know it's worth paying for a human narrator or going to the trouble of narrating it yourself.
Right. Lots to think about, lots to think about. The things we do for our readers
Yeah, and listeners.
and listeners. So,
Now, I would love to bring on our guest today, who's Kendra Broekheis. For her day job, Kendra stays home with her 4 children and drives them from one place to another in their minivan. She's written, spoken, and created non-fiction content for over a decade, and now is excited to be publishing 2 novels with Waterbrook. Kendra, welcome to Behind the Story.
Hello, and thank you so much for having me.
So for those who aren't familiar with you, just tell us a little bit about yourself and what you write.
Yes, well, you covered the basics so well. I live with my family in Milwaukee. My husband's a teacher here, and I have 4 kids, ages 3 to 10. So a lot of the time I'm taking care of them and home with my 3-year-old while the others are at school. But as you said, I have written a lot of nonfiction in the past, a lot of devotional and Christian nonfiction type writing, also a lot of fun motherhood content for social media. And after about 10 to 12 years of that, I was ready to try something new. And so I thought about what would I do if I tried to write something for the fun of it. And the answer to that question was a novel. So that is what brought me to attempting to write Between You and Us and sending it off to publishers this past year.
Right. So I can relate a bit, like I was doing nonfiction sort of stuff, and but going into fiction is a whole different realm, and it's completely different what we learned in high school to writing the craft of fiction and writing contemporary. So tell me about the process. So you wrote this first draft, like how long did it take you to learn the craft and sharpen it up and good enough to, like hand to your agent? How did that go?
Yeah, that's such a great question. So I would say from start to finish for my first draft was roughly 8 months. A fun fact about me that I tried to hide a little bit while I was doing so much nonfiction was that I actually prefer fiction, reading fiction. And so sometimes I felt like a poser a little bit in my genre of nonfiction because secretly I just want to be reading lots of novels behind the scenes. So I would say so much of my craft education was just through mass consumption, reading a lot as a teenager, young adult, into adulthood. But then when I realized, okay, I really want to try this professionally, that's when I signed up for some classes, signed up for a conference, just to try and learn a lot more, some coaching as well. So between those things and some very helpful feedback from beta readers and other friends who really enjoy fiction, I was able to sharpen up my manuscript enough where I felt like, okay, I think this is the best I can do on my own. And now it's time to see if an editor would be interested in taking it into their hands and really shaping and molding it.
Awesome. And so was there a process with your, because I know you said we spoke offline that you had an agent with your nonfiction. So you submitted your manuscript to her. Was there a bit of back and forth before it went to finally to the publisher?
Yes, there was. So her and I had to just discuss if I had all the elements necessary for a story. The unique thing about fiction is that in order to send it into publishers, you have to have, at least for a debut author, you need to have the entire manuscript finished, which is a lot different than nonfiction, where you're sending in a more brief book proposal, maybe and a couple sample chapters along with it. So I felt like that was it's almost like the preliminary test of, can you create a story that has the full arc of character development and interesting plot, beginning, middle, end, all those things. So she just had to make sure that I had that aspect of my story and had it crafted well in my book proposal as well. So that was the back and forth with that before she sent it into publishers.
Awesome. All right, well, let's talk about your upcoming book, Between You and Us. Leona hopes enjoying a rare upscale meal with her husband, David, will help them begin learning how to live again after their shared tragedy. But when she crosses the threshold of a ridiculously romantic restaurant, she quickly realizes she doesn't belong. It's not only her thrifted dress or the menu printed in Italian, it's all the clues pointing to the fact she's in a different version of her life. What's the story behind Between You and Us?
So we have Leona Warlin here, who is a grieving mother, and she is meeting her husband across town for this fancy dinner that they want to go to, as part of trying to heal from their grief together. And so when she meets her husband at the restaurant, it's for their anniversary, and she is hoping that, and he's hoping as well, that it's this chance to take a step forward after a year since they've lost their baby girl. So Leona starts to realize, though, when she gets to this restaurant, like, things are not the way she remembers them in her real life. Her husband seems different, everything from the way he looks to the way that he's interacting with her in a more cold way. And so these signs add up to her realizing that, hey, this is not my actual life. This is not the life that I know. And the cherry on top that really pushes her over the edge to believe that is realizing that her daughter is still alive, her daughter Vera. So her daughter is older than when she passed away. She's about 18 months at this point that she's meeting her. But suddenly Leona goes from, wanting to figure out what's going on and why she's in this different outcome of her life to, hey, my daughter's here. Why would I want to leave? So we get to follow Leona through two different timelines. So it is a dual timeline novel. In one timeline, she's, living this new outcome of her life, trying to figure out why she's there. And then that goes every other chapter then with some flashbacks to her actual life, to how she met her husband David, to what their love story is like, to what it was like having Vera, all these things. So it is a dual timeline novel that goes about every other chapter with these two different timelines.
Wow, that sounds interesting. So for those who aren't familiar with like these kind of novels, and you've probably got a unique sort of spin on how you've done it. So how do you explain, is it just sort of like the chapters are just going in it and the reader's just working out what's going on? Like, or is there, so there's the real life situation and her other, this this other option, sort of follow your path or something like that. So how do you explain it? Is it sort of like something that she's imagining or dreaming of or hoping that is real, or is it something that develops and gets found out within the story once you're further down the track?
Yeah, so she, I would say that's well, if readers want to know that is something that she is trying to figure out. And she definitely goes through some processing time that was hopefully part of the writing process to make that feel more realistic, of really making her process, like, how can this be real? Am I dreaming? Am I dead? What is going on here that I'm not living in the house that I usually live in, that my husband is so different towards me, that my daughter is still alive. So she's definitely trying to process that and figure that out, while at the same time trying to keep her cover as well, because, if you're experiencing that and you would tell someone that, it would be really hard for them to probably believe you. So she's definitely processing things, and throughout the story trying to figure out what exactly is going on, while again feeling quite distracted of getting this extra time with her daughter that she didn't have.
Wow. Wow, that sounds great. So introduce us to Leona. What's her strengths and her quirks?
Oh, well, I don't know if listeners are familiar with the Enneagram. When I was trying to shape Leona, I imagined her as kind of an Enneagram 9, a peacemaker type of personality, someone who doesn't necessarily quickly want to rock the boat or cause conflict. And so I wanted to use that personality both as someone who would complement her husband well. Her husband is this very driven, charismatic, entrepreneurial type personality, goal setter type guy. And so I wanted to use that also to create some conflict as well. So again, with her being in this different outcome of her life, trying to navigate that, and also in her relationships as well, she's one to, internalize things more, to really process them on the inside before she's willing to create conflict or, try to work through things outwardly within her relationships. So I would say it can work. that characteristic of hers works as both a strength and a weakness at times. So we definitely see in her relationship with her husband, while they're dating, while they're in college and getting to know each other, that her internalizing things versus talking through them with him creates, at first feels like she's keeping the peace in her relationship, but further down the road causes a lot of conflict then when her husband David doesn't realize a lot of the thoughts or a lot of the hardship that she's been going through in their relationship. Whereas when she's in this other outcome of her life, trying to figure out what's happening, trying to kind of stay undercover a little bit, she even says to herself, like, I just need to keep my mouth shut and try to figure this out, like I usually do when I'm working through my problems. So this idea for her of like, oh, I want to keep the peace, I don't want to, create too much conflict in my relationship, can be at times a unifier, and at times, isn't true peace in her relationships, as she finds out.
Right. Well, I definitely can relate to that. Definitely
Yeah.
an internal processor, and like, rather than stressing everyone, I'll like process it and I'll work it out. Keep the peace and everything. But it's not always good. It's good to like, share and open up and strengthen each other in those times. So Between You and Us is an alternate reality where Leona has to choose between two impossible choices: a close relationship with a husband or her daughter still alive. Was it always these two choices, or were there other drastic, choices ever an option for this story?
Oh, that's another wonderful question. We're told as authors to really like ramp up the stress for our characters, like really put them through some pain. But I will say, I think this is where I felt my limits for Leona as a character. Like I wanted her, she's been through a lot, she's going through a lot. And there is a point in the story where she's almost philosophizing with those around her, like, what does this mean that she's in this different outcome of her life. And what are the other possibilities then that might be out there? But I would say that the focus of this story is mostly on these two specific outcomes. But that being said, there's more than one difference between these two outcomes of her life. It is not only that, in one outcome, Vera very tragically passed away, and in the other, she's still alive. There's quite a few layers here as well, like regarding socioeconomics. Leona comes from a very impoverished background, a very difficult and pretty traumatic background, upbringing, whereas David comes from an extremely uber wealthy family, very powerful family in the city of Milwaukee. And so each of these outcomes reflects them either, kind of joining in David's family that, yes, offers a lot of financial resources, but also a lot of grief, also a lot of pressure, also a lot of discomfort as a couple. And in the life where Vera passed away, where they're really struggling financially, where things just, and there's a lot of other external factors in their life that while they are in love, while they are like making it to the other side, not the other side of grief, but making it through grief together, there's a lot of things about their life that are not easy at all, including their socioeconomic status. So I tried to differentiate a lot of those factors as well in the story so that it's not just this one thing. It's not just, oh, is the grass greener on the other side because of this one thing that's different? But no, these are two very starkly different outcomes of David and Leona's love story.
Right. Well, you're definitely creating some curiosity there. And it sounds like a real gut-wrenching book. Many reviews are highlighting the depths of grief and the rawness of losing a child. What is your experience that made this book so real?
Yes, so I'll say the circumstances in the story in the book are very different than my own. I would not say that there is like a lot of overlap in the specific story that's in the book to mine. But the theme of grief that I wanted to include in this story is tied to the grief that my husband and kids and I went through about 8 years ago now when we lost one of our babies. So we went to our 20-week ultrasound for our second baby and found out at that ultrasound that due to the baby's size, the health of the baby's organs, all these different factors, the doctors told us at our ultrasound that they didn't necessarily know the specific diagnosis yet, but our baby was not expected to live. And so we, over the next couple months, then we, continued ultrasounds. We prayed and prayed for miracles to happen. Just had so many other people praying for us too. That's what's actually when I was sharing a lot of my nonfiction writing was about going through this, about not knowing what was going to happen, about experiencing the unknown. And 13 weeks later, after that ultrasound, our baby passed away and was stillborn. And so after going through that unknown, hoping for a miracle, praying for a miracle, and not receiving a yes answer to that prayer was then just more grief, more sadness, and trying to process what our faith looked like through that time as well. And just going through a really, really dark season in a lot of ways. And so I wanted to try and capture what it looks like, the different layers of grief, the nuances of grief, that it's neither, it's not just staying in bed the rest of your life, and it's, letting yourself be sad for at times an unknown amount of time, just so that you can process your sadness and grief and what life looks like after something like that happens. So I was hoping to capture that in this story and capture, the idea of lament, the idea that it's okay to grieve and it's okay to not feel like you have to tie a pretty bow on your pain just because of your faith, while at the same time allowing your faith to anchor you through it.
Mm. definitely some lessons in that. And I think you're right, as you know, the Christian faith people, you know, oh, I'll see them in heaven or whatever, like, but you actually shouldn't suppress that grief. You do need to process that. And it is really like we're here on earth and present. We're going to live these years and we do need to process it. So wow, that's a great message in that. So you were writing your nonfiction, you started that blogging or something like that during this time?
Yes. So I had started writing a few years prior to this, and was actually, interested in, writing professionally, wanting to publish a nonfiction book. And at that time being told, like, we like your writing, but your platform's not quite there yet for a nonfiction publishing contract. And very shortly after that, I was like, all right, new website, social media, here we go. Let's take a whack at this professional writing thing and just invest in it for a couple of years and see where it goes. And it was just shortly after that we had that 20-week ultrasound. And so that was not the plan, obviously, was not to be writing that kind of content, but that's definitely where my writing went, was just processing it. Writing was such a gift to me at that time. It was, I mean, I know and I trust that it was also a ministry, but the Lord also let it minister to my own heart, just to process in the rawness what that was like. And yeah, it was definitely something that then spread and I think ministered to a lot of women and families who had gone through something similar.
It's actually how I started getting to fiction writing. I have a close friend, her sister had gone through, having a baby that's stillborn, and just seeing how her going through that and how she processed and, how she picked herself up after that. But, definitely all the grief and the process. It just was so inspirational, but also, like gut-wrenching and everything. And I just wanted to write her story, and I hadn't written fiction before, but like yourself, like you're just reading lots of fiction, so you sort of it naturally goes, subconsciously goes in on how to write, although I had to rewrite for 18 months. But yeah, it is something that drove me, like, I want to share this message, and there's people out there, and and exploring that. And also, even her situation was different, but the judgment that she got through that, because it was like out of wedlock that she got pregnant, and so it was a bit of like, oh wow, that's God judging you, sort of thing, like when she lost the baby, which is terrible.
Yeah.
So anyway, so there was like that kind of stuff I wanted to explore as well. But yeah, fiction is definitely a way to do that, because having more compassion for the character, but also, you're in their head, you're feeling those emotions, and like your story, the processing and the different options in her head, you know what I mean, of how things could have went or how things should go. So we do live a lot in our head, and especially authors, we live a lot in our head, but people do. And so this is like great to bring all this out and think through these things. So now, what do you think is more difficult about fiction than nonfiction? Which one do you prefer, and what's the bonuses and the negatives?
Oh, I would say, I mean, there's definitely and I still feel that way. There's always more to learn about craft, and I feel like I'll never be done learning. But I would say it was hard for me as a nonfiction writer and also speaker for a long time to then go from, okay, don't just tell this, you have to show it, and really deciding, like, how much do I have my characters explicitly saying what they're learning versus like just showing it through body language and just showing it through, the interactions that they're having versus like someone saying exactly what they want to say. And also as well, like how much of a person's backstory do you share? How much of the characters who are not the main characters, who are more the side characters, how much do you share about them, so that people are so that readers are understanding where those side characters are coming from and their perspective and in their interactions. So I do think there's something about the beauty of nonfiction can be like, oh, I can just say this. I can just like say the message and it's said, it's out there, versus fiction really weaving more of a story that shows what's going on, and at times really letting readers interpret for themselves what the characters are learning, or what the themes are, what are some of the lessons learned here. So I think that has been a big learning curve for me, and something that I still want to keep learning. It's like the fine art of how much to show versus tell. But I mean, the thing that really unites both nonfiction and fiction is story. Like people learn so much, as you said, like so much compassion is learned when we're willing to sit in someone else's story, whether that is nonfiction or fiction. It's so powerful. It's so much more powerful to hear a woman's personal testimony of stillbirth than hearing the statistic of how many women have gone through a stillbirth. So I love that about fiction, is like you said, you're really getting in the characters' heads. You're really getting to see, follow them through this experience that maybe I haven't been through before. And so I get to learn it in this novel.
Yeah, definitely. I have heard also like some fiction authors, when they go back to writing nonfiction or writing nonfiction the first time, bringing story story into parts of their nonfiction makes it more alive and relatable as well. So be interesting if you switch back to that later and see how that affects things. It is definitely a learning curve with all the craft and like what to include and what not to, and how much backstory, and it's a bit of a journey. I'm switching now into the last few years, so I did women's fiction now, more like fun stuff like romantic comedies and things like that, and first person present tense. So you actually do need to tell more, like like their thoughts and that kind of stuff. And it's like I've learned all this show not tell, you know what I mean? Just the body language, work it out. And now like but it actually is different. It actually can be more powerful. Like you are really into the character's head then and experiencing it. But there's some people that really go into that a lot. But I still got that thing, no, showing it like a movie, show it like a movie. Which is good, I think. I like doing that. But I get to the point a lot quicker than some people can just write lots and lots of words, but I'm just like in there and out. Okay, so you've written this first one. When is it launched? Just now?
March 12th. Yeah, so excited.
Okay, awesome. And you signed a 2-book contract, so you're working on the next one. You have written the next one. How's that going? What's going on with that?
Yeah, so the next one is half written and is due at the end of July. So I do feel that deadline breathing down my neck a little bit, in an exciting way. So I will, after this launch, definitely be hiding down in my hole again, just so I can really get into the story and get that second book written.
Mm-hmm. A lot of authors, what's their favorite book of theirs that they've written? It's usually the one they're working on or the one they've just done. So what's your favorite character out of these two books? Like, what's your favorite character?
I would say that in my debut, In Between You and Us, I really loved writing David, her husband, as a character. He's just a really like endearing, sweet man, really supportive, really funny. So I really enjoyed writing him as a character. And I think that, again, just knowing that he was, not always fully self-aware, not always fully aware of what Leona's going through, but which I think makes it a pretty realistic relationship then at times too. But just the fact that he's such an endearing, supportive character for her and for their marriage while they're going through some really, really intense dark seasons. So I love that about him. I love, David Warland as a character.
Awesome. Okay, so let's switch it up. What's your favorite thing to do when you aren't writing? What's some hobbies that you like doing?
Oh, I feel like it's way too cliche to say reading, but that really is the truth. When I'm not writing, sometimes it feels like such a reward to be like, okay, I hit this deadline. I'm going to let myself like be fed now by a book versus trying to create a book or create some writing. So when I'm not writing, I just love to read.
Do you have a palette cleanser where you read a different genre to what you write in, or try some historical or something like that, or do you?
Oh, I do. I love a wide variety of genres, but actually sometimes it's the opposite because I try not to read a lot in my genre while I'm writing because then I get nervous that I'm like either stealing an idea or oh, they did it way better. So I almost feel like I need to read outside of my genre to not feed my insecurities. So sometimes then when I'm done with a project, it's like, oh, I get to read in my genre now. How exciting.
Yeah, I pretty much these days, because now I write, just like focus on writing like that month this is writing, and I'm not writing all the year. Yeah, I don't read anything else, and then it's a treat to go and read someone else's book after.
Yeah.
All right, another fun question. You just won a lifetime supply of the last thing you purchased. What is it?
Ink toner,
Woo!
which is real exciting. Isn't that amazing?
That'd be great, wouldn't it? It's so expensive.
I'm printing out all my galleys now.
Okay, what is something people might be surprised to learn about you?
I would say maybe they'd be surprised that when my husband and I first got married, we lived in Guatemala for 3 years and we had our first child there.
Wow.
So yeah, it was a really exciting time and such formative years for our marriage and our life as a family. So it's like, even though we only lived there for 3 years, it was very formative to our family life.
Wow. All righty. So you've told us what's coming up next. You're writing your next book. Where can readers find you online so they make sure they follow you, and for your next release as well?
Yes, I would love that. So I'm on Instagram and Facebook as Kendra Broekheis. And then I would say most of my writing right now is in my newsletter, and then more little bits on social media. So my newsletter is, you can find that at my website as well, which is also kendrabrookheis.com.
Yes, and we'll have the spelling on the link. So you can just
Yes,
click
I
the
know.
link in the
Dutch
show
last
notes.
names.
All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing with us on Behind the Story.
Thank you so much for having me. This was lovely.
So remember to connect with Kendra. We'll have the links in the show notes. Also, she's offering a paperback of Between You and Us as a competition. So the King Simo link will be in the show notes. So don't forget to enter that. Naomi and I, the co-hosts, we also have a giveaway when you sign up to our newsletter. So Naomi has On Desolate Heights, if you like historical fiction set in Bible times, and I have a Fake Engagement Mistake, which is a fun rom-com. So those links will be in the show notes as well. Thank you for joining for this edition of Behind the Story. Until next time, let us run with endurance the race set before us, looking unto Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith. Bye-bye.